the difference between self-confidence and self-worth, right? So self-confidence is literally like this painting on the wall, right? It's the decorations in a house, right? So you can put as many decorations you want in this house to try to make it look pretty. But the foundation of your home is your self-worth. Our self-worth is our inherent belief in our ability to do something. And you can put up as many pretty decorations as you want, like dress yourself up, but it's just delaying the inevitable, which is that you truly believe that you can't make that next step. So like we talked about, how do you create more self-worth and build that? It's with irrefutable evidence. It's accumulating those actions over time that are proving to yourself, guess what, motherfucker, you can do this.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. And I've been waiting for this episode for a minute. I was wanting to get Ryan back on the episode or on the show. You guys know that Ryan is no stranger to the podcast, but we see each other periodically throughout the year, and I definitely want to do this in person. So welcome officially back to the show, my friend.
Thank you. It's good to be back. This is actually our first in-person on your podcast.
It is.
So this is quite special.
So make it even specialer. Yesterday, day before, I got a time hop of you sitting on a porch, a little time hop of you sitting on a porch on the last episode of the show. It was from just like whatever the time, 1 or 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
It was, it was there. So for like timing wise, it was exactly like 2 years ago. So
holy crap. I haven't done shame on you. 2 years.
Well,
I should be a quarterly guest. You son of a bitch.
I wanted to do in person. So,
well, to be fair, I probably hadn't seen you for like 2 years.
Truth.
I mean, now I see him all the time.
Yeah.
But I probably hadn't seen you for a wee bit since then.
Right.
So that was good.
Right.
So it's on me.
That's right. It's all your fault, Ryan.
This is my podcast.
That's right. I mean, you are rocking the merch right now. You are rocking the merch though.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That's right, baby. Dieting from the inside out. That's right.
That's right. So I have no notes. But I just know with you, I don't have to have notes. So before we dive into all the good, we get what's some updates on Ryan, and like lots been going on the last 2 years for you.
God.
So give us some life updates,
dude, mate. I mean, you know what? I will say, last 2 years were very, let's say just like lesson learning for sure. So I think the biggest thing that I think of over the last 2 years, well, one, I moved to San Diego. So I moved across the country, which was a dream I always had since college, was to move to San Diego. And, you know, it just life sucks you in. You kind of get stuck in your small town, and then like you just think it's never going to happen. And then I just said, fuck it. Fuck it. And I said, screw it. And I said, fuck it. But I said, fuck it. Let's go across the country and pursue this dream, because I'm very much the type of person who the thought of regret scares me way more than any inaction. So I was like, that can't happen. So I moved across the country. I think the other thing too is like I was in a relationship for like the last 2 years, and that was so, like I said, it granted me so many lessons, and it's been over almost 8 months now. Wow. Since being out of it, and I'm in a much better headspace now, and like just a lot of gratefulness now, a lot of time for reflection.
Oh yeah.
And like I think that's what really summarizes my last 2 years, is just so much growth and challenge, and like putting myself in hard but gratifying situations, and just really like pushing myself to change in so many ways. So what's going on in the last 2 years, Jared? You want to talk about the last 2 years?
We just squeezed the last 2 years into 2 minutes. 2 years in the last 120 seconds.
That's right.
I love it. No, that's awesome,
Crazy.
man. From like my side looking, the outside looking in, it's been cool as well to watch. Like so much growth that I've seen. It's from the conversations we've had from like, across the board. And at the time of filming this right now, we are in Orlando, Florida right now on my Airbnb couch. Cause I'm speaking at an event here tomorrow and stuff. So, but you're on like the middle of a big old fall tour right now. You're like bouncing from like city to city to city to city to city.
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's funny because I have literally been in all four corners of the United States in the last 2 weeks. So I started in San Diego, been to Washington, was just in Maine. Now I'm in Florida, and then I'm going back home to visit family in New England. And yeah, dude, I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, this is the first, I'm not sure you've ever done this before, but one of my big goals when starting my online coaching business was like, I want to be able to do this from anywhere, anytime. I want to be traveling. Like, I don't want to have to think about staying at a job and asking for vacation to go see family or just do things I want to do. So this is the first time ever since starting my business in 2017 that I've actually just traveled and like just made a purpose and made an intent to go see family, go see friends. And like, I love the fall. So like,
it's the best.
Soak in the fall and like really, it's been really wholesome. It's been really like so many beautiful memories have come from it so far. But it's just really cool. Like, I'm just like, oh, this is like what I've always wanted to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So in my head, I was actually going to take this conversation a little bit different way, but my gut's telling me to go over here with it. So, and usually my gut's right. For you, do you notice as you're starting to, let's say like you said, like originally when I started the business, I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted this freedom and I'd never really done the things yet, but now you are going full force into it. Are you facing any resistance at all? Like, are you feeling any like, oh, I'm actually got to do the thing. Oh, I'm going to all this stuff. Is there any of that for you or not really?
Well, it's funny you say that because I think like one of the biggest things I've really learned, like you just spoke about your gut and intuition. That's been like I think just my big awakening this year is following your gut, like following your intuition, because there's so many things I've done this year, whether it's like in a relationship, out of relationship, business coaching, like mentorship, saying yes to things, right? Saying no to things, taking myself on like solo event. Like, it's been my gut telling me to do it, like intuition. And there is resistance every time you feel that.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like, you want to talk about resistance, like, especially like I said, like with whether it's relationship, whether it's stress, like anytime I've ignored my intuition, like I was actually getting like GI distress from it, like actual physical symptoms, because it was just like I was avoiding what my gut was telling me. And so I think when it comes to like, when you say like, did I feel any resistance? Like, I think every time I feel resistance.
Well, so, and this is why I asked that, is because anytime we grow, it requires resistance. Like nothing grows without resistance. So if someone doesn't have resistance, they're not growing, generally speaking. All right. Well, I mean, that's for the vast majority of situations. But most people at the first sign of resistance cower or they relent. And I'm not even like this could go for anything, like having the hard conversation with the partner or the loved one, ending a relationship is not supposed to be going on, but it would be easier to stay in it. Scale spikes trying to lose weight and you're ready to throw in the towel, and it would be easy to throw in the towel. Like the person's done a dozen times, whatever it is. I feel, and I'm in like, the concept I've been talking with a lot of people about lately is resistance is required. Like it's a little corny saying that I use now, but it's not a sign that something's wrong. Like a lot of people take, this isn't going easy. God must not want me to have it. Or you know what? It's not in the cards for me. I see so many people validate bad decisions because there's resistance. Versus what I think people should do and what you've done is you take the resistance as like almost a key to execute, or like a trigger to like, resistance, I got to do it now. Fuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm kind of trying to come full circle with this is for you though, a lot of people get mixed up. I'm trying to see if I can word this correctly. Their gut intuition of the thing, but they're confusing that with avoiding the resistance, because when feeling resistance, it's like, this sucks. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. I shouldn't do it. But your intuition's like, do it anyway. But a lot of people get mixed up those two. in whatever we're talking about. So for you, how have you been able to decipher this is uncomfortable, but I know I should do it versus like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't think I'm going to do it. If that makes sense.
I think it all starts with reframing. I mean, I think that's like, I was just talking about this because one of my aunts is a therapist, and she was like a therapist for years. And we were just talking about how powerful the tool is of reframing your thoughts. Because I used to very much, like when I was having panic attacks like on the regular, it's because I was kind of ruminating in whether it was feeling kind of like you said, like avoiding your gut, or it's just like, or being scared of that next move. Like I was like, there was one point I was so scared of making that next move because I just knew it would be hard. I knew it was going to be met with change. Like change is not easy for me at all. I think most people it's not, but like I know for me especially, that's when I'm just like, you know? So for me, it really started with like how I was reframing it, right? So like if someone's looking at, well, this is going to be difficult, why, like maybe a good reframe would be, well, does difficult always mean bad or like loss? Like in this case, difficulty for me meant gain, right? It was like a positive. And I think another big quote that kind of, I think blends with this that's been really like on my heart this year is, you can either hurt to hurt or hurt to heal, right? So when it comes to following your gut and being scared to, like, you can either continue to hurt, which is kind of like meaning stay in the same pattern, but not get any gain from it, not make any traction, continue to grow sideways, right? Or you can hurt to heal, which basically means like you do that thing, you take that chance, and it means that it sucks still, right? Because both things suck still, but at least I know I'm trying. At least I know I won't have a regret from it. At least I know that I'm making some ground, even if it's just one step, right? So I would say, like, for people who are struggling with that, like, gut intuition, like, challenge that thought, reframe it. Like, what if it goes really well? Because I think a lot, like, fear is really embedded in change, right? Which is, I think, is the big limiter for most people of why they're scared to take that step, which makes complete sense, right? Like, your body wants to protect you from pain, but your body can't comprehend what's beyond that pain, right? Which is what you basically told me. I remember the night my ex and I had broken up, and I'm walking through,
I remember this,
South Park, which is in San Diego, and I'm on the phone with Jared. I'm just like crying, like just crying, like bawling my eyes out. And it was such a pivotal moment. But I remember I'm walking up this street, and then you say you're right now, you can only measure what you're losing, right? You said, but you have no idea what is beyond this and what you're going to gain from it. And I just remember like feeling like, as soon as you said that, dude, I felt so much peace come over me. And I was just like, dude, you're so right. You know, because that's all you can measure. You can only, your mind, your brain can only fathom what you're losing. Can only fathom what you're losing, right? So whatever change you're trying to make, your brain will try to tell you, well, you're going to lose this routine. You might lose this community because they don't maybe change their diet behaviors, or maybe like you'll lose, money, or like, but you'll never know what's on the other side of that. And it's it could be an infinite amount of good.
Yeah.
But you won't know. And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? That's kind of the beauty of all of this. So that is a long answer to your
this is
question.
Beautiful. No, this is why I don't know. This is why I don't have notes. Because this is how this stuff happens.
Yeah.
And I was actually originally I was gonna be like, how have you been able to keep your fat loss together? They're all traveling. That sounds that sounds such bullshit right now.
I hate that.
right. Because like
I got pretzel M&Ms over there, buddy,
and they're still there. But no, this is why I think it's so important. Like, this is another great example of following like the wisdom that's deep inside you, right?
Mm.
Like I was at first like, okay, where do I want to take this conversation? But then like. This is why I think it's so important to be reflective and be in tune with the now and what's going on. Because there's like, and this is why I think it ties to what we're talking about with what stepping into the unknown and the resistance and all this, is most time you only have a step. one, you only see the next step. You don't see the next 27 steps. Like for you with all the stuff, like what you were just alluding to is all you know is the brain sees what you can lose, but it cannot fathom what you can gain. So all you saw is the next step of, I have to let this thing go. Well, but what if it doesn't work out? What if I'm sad? What if it like that? But that's the problem, is this is where letting go, faith, belief in the good things, whatever it is it's almost like the best analogy I've ever heard with this kind of stuff is, imagine driving to vacation, but you can only travel at night. You only see the 30 feet in front of you of your headlights. You don't see miles in front of you. You're not in the plane ride. You see 15 feet in front of you, 30 feet in front of you. Like I recently, and we're probably going to talk about this, I'm assuming, on when you interview me here later, whenever, is when I made the big business transition. It was the most challenging thing I've ever experienced, because for like 3 months, 4 months straight, I saw one step at a time, and I had to there are parts of me that had the control freak patterns and the doership pattern. All these things had to quite literally die, and death is painful. Right. And I think that's why there was internal resistance. Like for you, is that part of you had to die. Right. There's actually, we were talking about, I think it's a Fray song. Off camera, we were talking about the band, The Fray, and they have a song, maybe a different band, but they were talking about how like this old part of you has to die, and death sucks. Like death hurts. It's not supposed to be a fun thing. Right. Because like you mentioned, it's all about self-preservation. And in a weird way, the thing that we're having to let go of, the control freak, the protector, this situation that lasted me this long, like it served you at some point. So your brain's like, no, we have to keep it. But the other thing that has helped me tremendously is the question, what if it could work out better than you could have ever imagined? I think I heard that first from Russ. He was in an interview. Jay Shetty was interviewing Russ, and Jay Shetty said, "What's the best advice you've ever been given?" And Russ, without missing a beat, says, "What if it could work out better than you ever could imagine?" And that like penetrated like my spirit, because from some of my patterns is I can what if. I have like a PhD in what if. I can worry and stew like Olympic level, right? So for me, that was a very hard pattern to let go of. I still struggle with it. But but the thing with the brain is, if we can sit and, well, what if all this bad stuff, for consistency's sake, the brain goes, well, what if this happens? And it changes your perspective. It goes, oh, I guess if we're going to play that side, we have to play this side, So
yeah, I think, well, in the spirit of Jay Shetty, like you just mentioned, he also has a quote where he says, your thoughts are like clothes, right? And you can change them at any time, right? And I think that is a really powerful thing to note, is the what if game, because it really is just anxiety when it comes down to it, right? It's the going down the rabbit hole of change, and what is going to what could be all the worst case scenarios. And I think I like what you said, because death comes in so many ways and shapes, and like we only perceive death as like actual somebody dying, right? But death comes with the death of a relationship, right? You're literally like, you're grieving a person who is still physically alive, but you're grieving a person, you're grieving a future, you're grieving the past, right? You're grieving so many things at once, and that happens with anything that we do, right? Like we talked about, like change. I guess change is like the biggest theme of this podcast, is like, with change comes death, and it comes grieving. And grieving is so, it's actually really beautiful when you think of grieving, right? Because it's so many different things that can be happening all at once. And it's not like those real, like the change where they say like, it's like sadness and then anger. Like it doesn't happen in order, right? It happens at all different times, all at once. But it really is a beautiful thing, because you have to grieve that part that is dying, or that thing that is dying, or that version of you that is dying, right? Like you have to do that, because it's like giving grace and giving acknowledgement to what was, right?
I would call it acceptance.
Yeah, exactly. and that's what eventually leads to, right? It's acceptance of what was and just acknowledging it, right? Which is so amazingly beautiful, right? No matter what it is. So when you go through that grieving process and you come to acceptance of that thing or person or anything like that, it does create this new version of yourself who is stronger in some ways, who is maybe has learned lessons. Like for me, I like, there's so many lessons that I've learned this year. Like one is like what I look for in a partner now, and like relationships, like the fact that like I've done so many solo things by myself. So now I have this, it's almost like you're just accumulating evidence, right? That's kind of what gives you the encouragement and the courage to change, is when you accumulate evidence that shows you can do this, right? Because that's really, if you want to talk about like slaying a dragon and the dragon being anxiety, the best way to slay anxiety is by accumulating evidence to show anxiety like, guess what, motherfucker? I can do this, right? So your what ifs are actually so incorrect because look at me, right? Look at me do this. Look at this action. That's why we talk about action so much with our clients and making the changes that they want in their lives, because action is the slayer of dragons.
I think it's in psychology, they talk about it like this is you getting irrefutable proof, because what happens is like it's a neural pathway. Is if your old neural pathway is going over this way and everything just automatically feeds the old pattern, but then now you have irrefutable proof that's death to this, like it's invalid. Like if all of a sudden my dog came walking in this room on the ceiling, my belief in gravity would disappear, or it would get really fucked up because of the irrefutable proof. And it's the same thing here. This is why I think with clients, when we, like, I think it's the first step to breaking a belief system, or one of the major pieces. If we have someone that we're working with that we have to break a belief, they can scream affirmations all day, they can journal on this stuff all day, but if they still have that thing that's like, no, this is true, and there's more certainty in it, but then you show them a reality that quite literally goes against it, the old belief literally crumbles. So
No, I mean, I think that's so true. I mean, it is irrefutable proof that allows you to get some semblance of belief, right? And I think more importantly, hope, because I think what we're talking about too, when people fear that change or anything like that, it's because hopelessness lives within them, right? The inability to believe and hope that something can change or they can change, right? And I think whenever you can have that slight belief, like that's really like self-worth too, right? Like one of the big things that I've been talking about with a lot of clients is like the difference between self-confidence and self-worth, right? So self-confidence is literally like this painting on the wall, right? It's the decorations in a house, right? So you can put as many decorations as you want in this house to try to make it look pretty. But the foundation of your home is your self-worth, right? So that's our self-worth is our inherent belief in our ability to do something, right? So we talk about foundation all the time, right? So if your foundation, if your belief is truly that you don't believe you can do something, or you don't believe you can make this change or anything like that, you won't. And you can put up as many pretty decorations as you want, like dress yourself up, but it's just delaying the inevitable, which is that you truly believe that you can't make that next step. So like we talked about, how do you create more self-worth and build that? It's with irrefutable evidence, right? It's accumulating those actions over time that are proving to yourself, guess what, motherfucker, you can do this.
yeah, I love that. Well, and going back to the picture and foundation analogy, in order for that picture to be there has to be a foundation of the house. If the house wall's crumbling, then that's going to fall. I think this is why we see people who think if they just get some quick confidence, like, oh, I'm just going to lose some fat, I'm just going to scream at myself in the mirror every day, I'm going to like listen to some motivational music or a speaker, but they don't actually do the deep work that heals these things. It's no wonder they're fleeting, right? The picture falls, so to speak. So
yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, I think that's what it is. It is, do you inherently believe that you can do this, or are you just kind of building this false sense of who you are and trying to decorate it with pretty things? And it's inevitably going to crumble, right? Like that's just how I've been through that. Like I'm sure you've been through that in some ways. Like it's just what happens.
Yeah. So for you, let's get a little strategic. So on the subject of leaning into resistance, letting go of things that deep down one knows they should, stepping into these unknown territories. Again, we could apply this to anything. Like even like, let's say coaching is a great example. Like a lot of people, I mean, actually I was chatting with someone the other day about this person, for every logical reason they know they should sign up for coaching and get the help that they need, because they have nothing but a track record of failure and struggle, and it's getting worse. But everything inside their brain is, oh, how much is it going to cost? I'm going to lose this amount of money. I'm going to lose these associations with these friends. I'm going to lose this identity of a failure and not good enough. Like that's going to die. I'm going to lose this. I've seen people where they're like, they struggle with their weight. Mom struggle with her weight. So if they get good, they're going to lose this some semblance of tied to their mother, like crazy shit. Now this person ended up signing up and like everything's changing for them. But in anything, there's these levels of resistance. So for you, where does someone start? Because we don't want to just say, we'll just do the hard thing. Just like, I'm sure it's part of it, but it's not quite that cut and dry, I don't feel. So if someone's struggling with facing their resistance, whatever it is, how does someone start that?
Yeah. I think if you're struggling to face your resistance, like if I were to kind of reverse Uno and put it on myself with my own history with that stuff, I think one, creating the awareness around why it would be important for me to make that change, right? I think so many, like you said, so many times you can clearly label why it won't work out. But I don't think we often write down what good can come from all these, like if I make this step, like all the good that can come from it, how I'll feel as a person, how my identity can look like, how my interactions with family might change, like my relationships can change. I think when you start writing all those things down, I think one, it removes a lot of the emotion you're feeling with it, right? Because I think sometimes, like, and you and I are very deep emotional people, sometimes our emotions can fuck us, right?
Oh, for sure.
So if I'm too emotional and I'm weighing heavy on this resistance and making this next step, then sometimes the best thing is to logically think it through, right? And so write down logically all the good things that can come from this thing, because that's very possible, all those things, right? So thing one, write down all the good, the person that you can be, how it's going to impact relationships, how it's going to impact your health, how it's going to impact, and even maybe finances, right? Like maybe it's like, well, if I get really healthy, maybe I can be more consistent and do that side hustle I always wanted to do, right? Or like maybe show up better for work and get a promotion, right? Or something like that. See it all the time. Right? So there's a lot of good that can come from it, right? I would say the other thing too is like validate those emotions too, right? I think, because we always, like, you always see those people saying like, do the fucking hard thing, or be like a hardo, right? It's
David
like,
Goggins it or something.
Yeah. And it's like, there is a time and place for that, for sure, right? But I think that's really, like, I don't want to say it's dangerous, but you just have to be very mindful of that mindset, because it's very running off motivation. And we all know motivation is such a finite fuel. And my own fear, if I were to just go hardo like that, is that I'm going to run out of fuel eventually, and then I'm going to go right back to where I started, right? Because if I'm not acknowledging, like, yeah, this is difficult, right? This is hard, and not giving myself grace and understanding and patience. So I would say also too, like, when you're going through like these stages of resistance, you have to give yourself grace and patience. And how I do this is, one big one is through therapy, right? And because it helps when you're talking it out with somebody and are like, no, you're just being a dick to yourself right now, right? Or they're just like, that makes no sense, right? But I think another big thing too is like what I did recently, because I was feeling very overwhelmed, and I was just like, why am I feeling overwhelmed, And instead of just like saying why I'm overwhelmed, I was like, let me just journal this down. So I journaled, in my journal, I wrote down like, why am I feeling overwhelmed right now? And I kind of wrote down all the things in my life that were kind of going on. And then after each thing I wrote down like, well, here's what I'm actually doing that is making small steps towards progress, right? So then I'm just like, oh, like, dude, you're doing that thing, but you're not giving value to that thing, right? So I think, we talk about people, how can they make these steps and all that stuff. But if you're not giving value to the actions that you're doing, then you never appreciate it. And if there's no appreciation, right? We talk about appreciation with like money all the time and stuff like that, then you just view it as just like it's a negative or it's just a net neutral. But when you give it appreciation, it gives it value. And now you're like, oh, I am making progress here, right? And that resistance maybe feels a little bit less or less heavy. So again, I'm going on a tangent here, but like some strategic things, obviously write down like the good that come from all these, from the end goal or the steps, right? Another thing is to give yourself grace and validate your emotions. And I think just when it comes to resistance, like writing down expectations and realistic expectations, and then also like, maybe creating a plan B or something along those lines where like maybe it isn't going all in with your nutrition. Maybe it's just starting with some exercise or something, like small steps, So I would say like when it comes to practicality, you have to validate your emotions. You have to write down all the good that can come from the end of that resistance. And then also just making sure that you are, I have a total brain fart right now.
Well, I think this is good. I think it's, I think there's a lot of stuff in there. I think it's important because the first thing you said about writing down the good, it's the other side of the equation that we talked about earlier. The mind can only measure what it will lose, but it can't measure what you'll gain.
Right.
You're literally writing down what it can gain to bring that unknown where it's like, I don't know, but to like, oh, well, what if this changes the course of my family history forever? What if me fixing my stuff fixes my kids without even having to try? And I think a lot of the other little pieces in there I think it's all really important. The one thing I would piggyback on the end of it that I've found that helps is I think it's really important for people to make the decisions of embracing and leaning into the resistance before the resistance gets here. Like, I think of it this way, like most parents can resonate when I ask this question of most parents have the sex, drugs, and peer pressure talk way before the kid needs it, right? Like they don't wait till they're like in 8th grade before they have the sex, drugs, and peer pressure talk. Most parents I talk to have that talk with their kids way before a situation ever arises where someone's trying to do some stuff. And it's because they want them to be ready for it and have their decisions made and their plan of attack in place before they enter the emotionally charged situation, right? So so this way, I mean, it's almost like on a more surface level, it's like nutrition. If someone waits to figure out what they're going to do about their nutrition when they're going out to eat, they're going to get to their meal and go, fuck it, I don't even care, I'm going to start over Monday. But if they go, well, here's the restaurant I'm going to, I'm probably going to order this, or, I'm going to get whatever I want, but I'm going to take half in a to-go container. Here's the plan. The percentage of success is so much higher because the decision's already made. Now you just have to follow the plan. But if the deeper stuff with the resistance for me is, if someone knows how the resistance is going to come, they know what it looks like, they know in the context in which it's coming, and then they go, okay, when this hits, not if it hits, when this hits, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And so this way, when it gets here, the commitment's already made, the decision's already done, and the plan is already laid out. So that way they just follow through. I mean, how many times have you yourself said, all right, here's what I'm going to do. And then when the time gets there, you're like, fuck, I wish I didn't say I would do that. But I did. I'm going to do it anyway because that's what I committed to. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Another analogy I think to piggyback that would be like a GPS, right? Like when you input your destination, it tells you exactly the directions you're going to have to take. You're going to take a right here. It's going to be 20 miles here. Then it's going to be maybe a long stretch, like a 90-mile drive here. So you're kind of already preparing for the resistance, how long it's going to take you, right? The different paths you're going to have to take. So, I think that is super true is preparation, right? You talk about like the stages of change, like preparation is one of those stages, and it's a stage for a reason because you do need to prepare yourself for the changes you're going to make, Yeah.
No, I think it's super important. Where for you, where's the dichotomy though on that? This just hit me. Most people spend all their time preparing and they never execute though. Right. It's like the person that makes this giant to-do list because it feels productive, but they don't do anything. Right. Or the person that's like, oh, I'm researching the best plan. I'm going to do this. I'm waiting until life slows down a little bit. I'm doing all the things. I'm researching, I'm getting everything together, but then 8 months go by and they haven't actually executed anything. So for you, where's the dichotomy in preparing, but also executing in the messy as well?
Well, you know what's funny is like you can really relate it to my move cross country, right? Like I technically was preparing to move cross country 10 years ago when I was graduating college. But it took those 10 years of me prepping my business, prepping my mindset, prepping my current community in the East Coast, like creating relationships, growing, changing, right? Like, so you can argue, like, I guess my point is like, I don't know if there's a, like, I don't know if there's a timeline. Like, you can argue, like it happens when it happens, right? Because, I mean, that's just my mindset. Obviously, like, if there's more immediate needs, like if somebody's really unhealthy and they need to make some changes, right? Like, then sort of preparing and preparing and preparing might be a detriment to you, right? Because you really need some short-term change, right? But I think that's where people get caught up on these timelines too. Like you can break that down too. That you could be like, well, you know, someone can only prepare for so long before now they're just avoiding, right? Because that's a real thing too. Then you could also break down like you'll change when you need to change, right? When it's time for it to happen for you. So I would say like that's kind of like I mean, this probably isn't the answer you're looking for, but it's kind of like the beauty of it, right? Sure. There's beauty in preparation, there's beauty in the execution, and it's a delicate balance like anything in life where too much of one thing can be a detriment, right? Like we said, someone can prepare for too long, and guess what? You just avoided trying to lose weight for the last 10 years, right? Because you were just, maybe it was fear, you're scared, like everything we just talked about, right? Or you start and then maybe you keep yo-yo dieting because you actually don't know what the hell you're doing, or the diet that you started was super unsustainable and that starts you to like, so you can yo-yo diet from either
it's
way,
a dichotomy,
right?
for sure.
Right? So that's why I said like that's the beauty of it, right? That's the beauty of choice. That's the beauty of individuality. And I think, like we said, like there it can go either way. But obviously it comes to a point where your preparation has to lead to action, right? Everything that we talked about. But that's why I gave the also the timeline, because timelines are interesting too. Because like I said, when I moved cross country, it wasn't like in college, like I was kind of trying to do it, but it just never happened. But I needed those 10 years apart from it to be ready to move cross country, right? So if you kind of get rid of these timelines in your head, it takes away that anxiety that can come within the preparation process and the action process, and just allow it to free flow and happen when it needs to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, I think the term I use, I've been telling people lately, is give yourself the gift of releasing of a timeline, or give yourself a gift, or specifically give yourself the gift of letting it take as long as it needs. You know, like that just instantly, if someone actually receives that and actually goes, okay, I'm actually going to like believe that, it takes all the pressure away. You know, it takes all the anxiety, all the stress. Cause I think it was, I think the first time I heard it was not that, but what I'm about to say, it was from Jordan years ago, where I think it was in 10 years from now, you're not going to give two shits whether it took you 12 months or 18 months to get to where you want to be. Or let's even stretch it out 1 year or 2 years. Literally on your 80th birthday, 90th birthday, you're not going to care whether it took you 1 or 2 years or 2 or 3 years to get to where you want to be. You're just going to care that whether like you struggled till you were 80 or 90, you know?
Yeah. And it is so true, right? Because I think we put a lot of power in the short term, right? In the moment. But when you can sort of zoom out and look at it from a whole as like a big picture, it's like, it doesn't matter when I lose this weight as long as I lose this weight, right? It doesn't matter when I start this business as long as I start that business, right? Like, you know, it doesn't matter when I go to therapy as long as I go to therapy, right? And obviously there's nuances to it, but like, it's true. I mean, it's like, and that's when we talk about, like one analogy I always like to give is like, if you had your life calendar, right? So your whole life on a calendar, right? So huge calendar, all these days, right? All these days, years. And that one day where you ate that cake, you marked that day as a red, right? Or an X, and you zoom out from the macro. When in that moment, you're like, I fucked up. I failed. This whole thing is a mess. But then you zoom out the whole calendar of your life. You're like, I can barely see that dot. Right? Like this, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So when you can kind of get to that point where you release it, like you said, and give yourself that grace and give yourself that power of taking back control, it becomes, those little things become less significant, and what matters more is that you just did the damn thing, or you forgave yourself, right? Those like actions.
Yeah, 100%. So changing directions a little bit. Again, I have no notes. I'm just going with what wants to come up.
No note man.
No note man. You know, it's funny. The more I do this, the less and less notes I have, even with like someone, let's say I don't know as well, or I'm not as close to. I just find it just works so much better. I actually, part of me wants to start another podcast where I refuse to have any notes except for 3 really wildly open-ended questions that are different every show, and just see where it takes the conversation, but different tangent. I don't think I've ever asked anyone this. For you, I'm curious. I don't know why, it just feels right. So watch, you're going to be like, I don't fucking know. And they kill it.
Wrong guy.
Yeah. Is there anything coming up, when I ask this, is there anything coming up for you right now that you feel like more people need to hear? I got nothing.
Yeah. Actually, I do have it. Cause, like I said, my big thing this year has been navigating this breakup and all the things that come with it, right? Like, it's probably the most I've cried in a long time. It's the most I've ruminated and thought. It's the most I've been so self-critical. It's the most like, did I make the right, like, did I make the right decision? Like,
you and I have had lots of those conversations.
So many. So the first thing that comes to mind is, if I had known better, I would have done better. And those words were so powerful. So I read this book. It's called I Love This Version of Myself That You Brought Out, right? So it's basically like an acceptance book for breakups. And there is that line in there that said, if I had known better, I would have done better. If they had known better, they would have done better, right? And that was it almost like released my own self-criticalness with the things I should have done, I could have done, or would have done, they could have done, they should have done, they would have done. Because I think, at least speaking for myself, and maybe someone else can relate, but I hold myself to such a sometimes imperfect standard. And I also, it's like a mixture of like, it's a fine line between a growth mindset and also a self-critical mindset that sabotages me. So that was such a peaceful line, because it kind of released me from that guilt, right? If I had known better, I would have done better, right? And I think a lot of people, I know this is dieting from the inside out, so like I think when a lot of people talk about their past diet history, like I'll talk to people on the phone and they'll talk about their past diet history and how they're so disgusted with what they've done, and they hate that it's taken them so long to get here and all these things. But it's like, if you would have known better, you would have done better, But
you didn't.
But you didn't.
And that's okay.
And it's okay, because those past versions of ourselves aren't who our current versions are, right? So it's such a freeing sentence. If I had known better, I would have done better. And because it just means that like we're on a journey, right? And you're going to evolve over time, and you can't beat yourself up for what you didn't know, So I think that's what comes up for me, is like, if I had known better, I would have done better. And it gives me my power back in some ways.
Well, it eliminates the egoic should. Like, or they call it shooting on yourself. Don't should on yourself. I should have known better. I shouldn't have made that decision. I should have been smarter. The things we can should on ourselves, literally 24/7. Oh, I should not have done that. Or, I should be further ahead. I should know better. Like, I remember I was talking to a mentor of mine. And we were going over some mistakes I'd made, and I go, man, I should have known better. And he goes, no, you shouldn't have. And he goes, you're taking the wise version of you now that knows all, like, I'm sorry, knows not all, knows everything up until this point. That's, let's say, 8 years between these two timelines. Oh, back then I should have known better. If I knew then what I knew now. And he goes, but you didn't, and you weren't supposed to. And I go, yeah, that's a good point. And he says, it was this journey that actually got you to know, to where you actually have this information and this wisdom now. But the problem is that is such an egoic judgment of self going, I should have known better. And it's like, actually you shouldn't have. I think it was Kyle Cease who said, imagine a third grader going, I should know high school calculus by now. And it's like, no, you're a third grader. You shouldn't know calculus by now. But too often on our own road to growth and expansion and ascension, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, we have a tendency to, when we have the wisdom now and we look back at our years of struggle, we go, I should have known better. But that's like a 3-year-old going, I should know calculus. It's like, no, the 12th grader says, I should have learned calculus by now. But it's like, you would never tell a 3-year-old that, and it's part of the journey. But I think there's this concept I've been talking with clients a lot lately. Just the concept of being present in fat loss is kind of what I call it. And I think being present is the cure-all to almost anything, because when we go, I should have known better, you're living in the past, you're not present. Or when we get all sorts of anxiety, what if this doesn't work? What if I do this and it doesn't happen? You're living in the future, you're not present. The present moment fixes everything. It's the most airy-fairy thing I've been saying, but I think it's one of the most tactical pieces to get with getting overwhelmed with self-judgment is, if you are just present for the 4 fucking seconds right now, you have one action, you have one thought, one focus, one everything. And then we're going to have another one right now. And then we're going to have another one right now. And I'm convinced it's the cure all for everything. So
I think your convincing is right. because I think it's, and that's like one of the big things I learned. So I went to a monastery retreat this year in February, and their big thing is mindfulness, right? And finding yourself in the present moment, because anytime we find ourselves anxious, overwhelmed, stress, shamed, guilt, right? You're in the past or the future, right? And you're in your own head. So at this monastery retreat, it was kind of cool because they started off the retreat with mindful walking. So this monk just starts taking us on the walk. Everybody's like, where the fuck are we going? Right? So it's like starting this walk, and she goes, I want you to pay attention as you're walking. She goes, are your feet beating up the earth as you're walking, or are they being kind and gentle to the earth? So without saying it, she's saying, how fast are you fucking walking right now? Like, are your feet like slamming as you're stepping, right? And how can you change your pace to be kind? So she's creating mindfulness with your immediate action that you're doing, with something you do all the time that you're not even thinking about, and allowing you to slow your pace down. And then the next thing she says, she goes, I just know that I'm in my head too much, so I can't even hear the birds. And that just cued us to sound, right? So right now I can hear the fridge and like that silence sound, right? I can hear your breathing. And
I'm stuffy, sorry.
Yeah. Fucker. And, but that cues you to be very present. Like now my breath's very slow because I did that, right? And what they also did was they sat us down for dinner, and before they start talking or anything like that, they're like, we're going to start with 5 minutes of mindful eating. So it's 5 minutes of silent eating. And when I tell you, this is the most fucking awkward thing I've ever done in my life, because for the first like 2 minutes, I'm like, does anybody else see me doing this right now? Like, do I look like a freaking idiot right now? Right? Like your thoughts start like going crazy. And then after those 2 minutes, they kind of calm down, they wind down. And then I start noting like the temperature of the pho that we're eating. I start noting like the umami flavor. I start noting like the texture of the vegetables, right? I start being more aware of the environment around me, right? And before I know it, like those 5 minutes go by, and I'm just like, I feel so at peace and still, right? And then the other thing they did was we meditated like a good amount of that day, like a large amount. But what I noted was on the walls, they had these words, right? And I was telling you this. I made you a friendship bracelet that he's not wearing, but I was telling you this because the reason I got the idea for making like friendship bracelets that have reminders for me on them, like I have bracelet, one says intention, one says breathe, one says peace. Beep, beep, beep. And what I noted, who's that? Okay. So what I noted was that on these walls were kind of like words that just reminded you to be in the moment and like remind you to breathe, to be still and all these things. So those are just like huge things that allowed me to sort of be okay with myself and all these other things.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny whenever a client is even struggling with like hunger and their relationship with food and emotions and stuff. But like one of the first things I'll ask him is, how often are you distracted while you're eating? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, oh, you have the TV on. Oh, you have the TV on and you're scrolling on your phone. Oh, and you're yelling at your kids. Oh, and you're walking out the door. Mm-hmm. But when, or tell them to sit their fork down between bites, all of these things, it helps with that, Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. I didn't even know, I know you mentioned the thing about the words on the wall, but I didn't know you went to a whole monastery and did all that. That's awesome.
It was cool. Well, like speaking of like, we talking about relationship, like that was one of the gifts my ex gave me. It was like, she took me to a monastery retreat and I was just like, I pulled so much from that. And like that I use with coaching and myself. And it's been huge. It's
funny when you were talking about that experience, what came up for me was it felt like how when I went to Kyle's event in LA, that big, like 5-day intensive, like deep work event. And one of the things that he wanted all of us to do is before this 9 to 5 event of inner work and more meditation, all this stuff, he wanted us to all do an hour of meditation in listening to silence for an hour before we come into the event. Mm. So I basically got up extra early to sit in silence and with my eyes closed and then go to this big inner work event. And it made me realize, because I'm no stranger to meditation, but I never meditated for an hour, let alone for almost a week straight before this event starts. And so many patterns of restlessness, and I want to be anywhere but this moment. I want to get work done. I want to get started. I want to like get caffeine. And it was funny, but forcing myself to be present and listening to, not trying to do anything with it, but listening to what came up forced me to like, oh, this is interesting. I'm just going to let this thing be here. And then like more came out. And then all of a sudden, all these other levels of perspective came out. And things that I was normally kind of triggered about that came up, the more I held space for it, the more they left. And then after all of it's gone, it's like there's a sense of peace after it,
No, I mean, it's so true. It's one of the biggest lessons I learned through meditation is to just be an observer of your thought, not judge every single thought that comes to your mind. Because when you can just observe it, you're like, oh yeah, there's anxiety, or like that is something I could do, but not right now, right?
Observance without judgment is what you're saying, right? I think the big issue is people observe, then they have a judgment, or then they have a qualification process instead of going, overwhelm is here right now. In period. It's like no is a complete sentence. Saying I'm overwhelmed is a complete sentence, or I'm stressed, or I'm sad. Versus going, I'm overwhelmed. I shouldn't be. I should be stronger than this. You know what? I don't like this. I'm going to go out and do it. Right? Versus just what comes up. I'm overwhelmed. I'm going to actually just be with this part of me that feels overwhelmed and actually be a space of love for it. Then the overwhelm happens to go away.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
That's awesome. I can't believe we're already almost an hour.
How about that?
Which means it's mini golf time.
Oops.
Okay, before we
Sorry,
go,
cousin.
this has been great. Thank you for doing this again. This is dope. Before we go, a couple things. What is some stuff in general that you're excited about and looking forward to in your life right now? Whether it be business related, coaching related, like whatever. What are you looking forward to most right now?
I'm looking forward to see my mom next week. I'm looking forward to see my nephew because he's having his 2nd birthday. I'm looking forward to see my dog Joey.
Oh, Joey.
I'm looking forward to going to Europe at the end of this year. So big theme I've been talking to my therapist about is like slaying the dragon. So we talk about the dragon being like anxiety and stuff like that. For me, it's like slaying that part of me that always thought I couldn't do it, or I couldn't do it by myself or anything like that. So slaying the dragon for me is like going to Europe by myself and like doing this Euro trip. So I'm looking forward to that. Business wise, I mean, I completely like revamped my systems this year. I invested in business mentors. I think for me, it's just like, as long as I feel good, as long as I feel aligned with business stuff, then I'm pretty content. You know, I know you have like a major, that's something you work through, is like your growth mindset and like navigating that and that fine balance. And I think for me, it's like making sure you're still growing and all that stuff and not being too content. But I'm very happy like where everything is business wise. And like I said, I think the things I'm looking forward to now are just like what matters most to me right now in my life, which is like family, friends, mini golf, and like just being kind of moment to moment. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Ironically, your podcast is called
These Little Moments
If
Podcast.
you would do an episode though.
Yeah, you're right. It's been a month, but we did a lot this year.
All right, man. Where can people find you? Because I'm sure if there's because obviously there's going to be a handful of new listeners since last time you were on the show. Thank God you're not doing it on a porch where birds are chirping.
Well, that was peaceful
For you.
Sorry to your editor. You can find me at Body by Ryan Fitness on Instagram. These Little Moments Podcast. And that's pretty much it.
I love it. Thank you again, my friend.
Love you,
Be
dude.
sure and subscribe if you have not already. Otherwise, we will talk to you all next time.
Bye.